Before the advent of people carriers, sports utility vehicles and crossovers, if you wanted a vehicle with a serious amount of space inside, there was this, the large Volvo estate. Today, badged V70 for the modern era, it's as uncompromisingly big and practical as ever, bridging the gap between medium-range Mondeo-sized estates and the very largest fully-fledged executive-shaped station wagons. High-tech safety features and an updated, more efficient range of engines continue to keep its appeal strong. Think of a big, boxy estate car. You're probably thinking of a Volvo. Though the Swedish marque now makes models of this kind that don't conform to such a stereotype, it knows that loyal buyers always have a soft spot for squareness. So it's difficult to foresee a time when there won't be a place in their range for a car like this V70, as Scandinavian as IKEA, as Swedish as meatballs, and as practical as ever. This is a car synonymous with its brand. Just as a 911 is most people's picture of a Porsche, a V70 is most people's vision of a Volvo. This is an estate that over the generations has built a peerless reputation for swallowing whole entire families and the kinds of cargo that would leave rival estates' tailgates ajar and secured with rope. Volvo, of course, has a long and illustrious history of producing exactly this kind of car, one that stretches all the way back to 1953 and the Duet PV 445 wagon. That was replaced by the classic Amazon model in 1962, which in turn gave way to the 145 series of 1967. But the big Volvo estate that people of my generation best remember is the big bumpered 245-265 series of 1974, the car that upwardly mobile Margot and Jerry Ledbetter drove in the BBC sitcom The Good Life. Remember that? Every middle-class Surbiton couple had to have one. So did every antiques dealer. In 1985, we got the ugly US-inspired 740 and 760 series, which was restyled and relaunched as the 940 and 960 series in 1990. Only with the introduction of the front-wheel drive 850 estate of 1993, though, did things really take a step forward. That car relaunched as the V70 in 1996. The first purpose-designed V70 followed in the year 2000, replaced in 2007 by the third-generation model that we're looking at here. It's now a familiar shape on our roads, but under the skin, much has changed, with a revised and more efficient engine range and enough high-tech gadgetry to match any rival. Is it all enough to match the German competitors that Volvo would like to beat? Let's find out. So what should your expectations be when it comes to driving one of these? Because on one hand, moaning that a big Volvo estate can't be hustled around the lanes like a sports saloon seems a bit ridiculous. But as the Swedish maker well knows, only slightly pricier German rivals like BMW's 5 Series Touring and Audi's A6 Avant have shown that it really is possible to produce a car like this with plenty of carriage capacity, yet at the same time quite an accomplished dynamic repertoire. It simply isn't acceptable for the Scandinavian marque to produce tank-like handling in this day and age, which, to be fair, it doesn't. In fact, since front-wheel drive first made an appearance on this class of Volvo with the 850 and V70 models of the mid-90s, buyers have mostly been pleasantly surprised at the speed at which this big car can be hustled round tight corners. But that doesn't make it a BMW. The word Volvo is literally translated from the Latin as I roll, and sure enough, round tighter bends, round sharper corners where the steering can feel a little vague, lean is a bit more pronounced than you'll find on German rivals. To be fair, you can do something about it if you really want to by specifying the company's 4C active chassis system, which gives you 3 suspension settings which you can manually change to suit the road you're on and the mood that you're in. I'm not sure I'd bother. Even with this feature fitted, other rivals do the whole sports executive estate thing so much better. And as speed rises, this car's demeanour improves. and it becomes more of a match for Audi and BMW with well-controlled body movements, supple suspension and impressive refinement. Even the manual 6-speed gearbox is decently slick, though many buyers will want to consider the optional 6-speed automatic, which on most petrol models is of the quick-shifting twin-clutch variety. It's all enough to make this V70 a fine touring car. Under the bonnet, much has changed since this third-generation model first put in an appearance. The diesels that most customers will want are of 5 cylinders in size. There's a mainstream choice between a 163 PS 2-litre D3 or a 205 PS 2.4-litre D5. Now both are decently rapid given the fairly hefty curb weight of nearly 1.8 tonnes that they have to lump around, even the D3 making rest to 60 in 9.5 seconds on the way to 130 miles an hour. While the D5's potent 440 newton meters of torque is enough to hurl your Labrador back against the rear tailgate with some force as you accelerate from rest to 60 in just 7.7 seconds on the way to a top speed of 140 miles an hour. When it comes to the petrol models, the T4 V70 that I'm driving here is almost as quick as the D5, making 60 in 8.2 seconds on the way to 134 miles an hour. It's a car that somehow manages to coax 180 PS from a Ford-derived EcoBoost unit of just 1.6 litres in capacity. And to me it makes far more sense than the other petrol alternatives, the 240 PS T5 and the 304 PS T6, the T6 being the only V70 that you can buy with all-wheel drive. As a brand, Volvo's design language has become significantly more trendy in recent years, but with this V70, the approach has been more cautious. For one thing, loyal buyers of this model wouldn't hold with ultimate carriage capacity being compromised in the way that it's had to be with the company's slightly smaller V60 model. Producing a more dynamic shape would have run the risk of alienating them with no guarantee of attracting those who would normally shop for an Audi or a BMW. So the practical square-backed silhouette we expect any big Volvo estate to offer remains with its bluff vertical tailgate. For trendier touches, you have to look a little closer. The way the climbing waistline has a forward-leaning, more dynamic stance, further reinforced by black pillars between the side windows, and the soft touch treatment at the front with its black egg crate grille intended to offer a sportier look. Slip behind the wheel and you're treated to Scandinavian design at its very best. Every little detail has been designed with 100% focus on clean form and intelligent functionality. It's an impression enhanced by this trademark super slim floating center console, simple instruments, switchgear that ergonomically is a match for anything from Audi and BMW, and these superbly comfortable seats. Only this rather fiddly electronic handbrake could be easier to use. In the rear, 3 fully sized adults will just about fit comfortably, enjoying decent standards of head, leg and knee room, as well as these neat vents in the B-pillars. If there are only 2 of you, then there's a useful and versatile centre armrest. A useful option for parents like me is the way that you can specify integrated booster cushions that fold out of the seat bases, one on each side of the rear seat, and they can be set at 2 different heights, thereby incorporating a wide range of child weights and ages. But what many buyers will really want to know about this car is its luggage lugging potential. Now, it's not the biggest car in its class in this respect. You can pay less for a Skoda Superb estate or more for a Mercedes E-Class estate and get more load space. But what's important is that there's quite as much room as any normal family, equestrian rider or antique dealer will ever need. The tailgate rises, it's optionally powered on this model, taking part of the taillights with it to create an even more generous opening for a 575 litre load space in the estate compartment here. That's 60 litres more than you got in the second generation V70. Now, those figures very often don't mean very much, so let me put that in practical terms. Volvo reckons that in here you can get 5 large suitcases, plus a medium-sized case and 2 rucksacks, or an entire washing machine with all its packaging. You also get a concealed underfloor compartment here that locks when the tailgate shuts. And for those with pets, there's the option of specifying these useful nets to keep your trusty Labrador in place. Now, if all that really isn't enough, then you can push forward these split folding rear seats to release up to 1,600 litres of fresh air. Just as important is the way that you can use all of that space. For really long items like surfboards or downhill skis, you can push forward the front passenger seat. If you've got something like an ordinary pair of skis or something long that doesn't actually need that amount of cabin length and you still want to carry 2 rear seat passengers, then the way that this rear bench folds 40-20-40 means that you can push forward only the centre part and carry your lengthy item quite comfortably. The whole rear carriage area features that kind of clever thinking. You've got these aluminium rails with their movable anchorage points. You've got a boot floor, which you can optionally specify in a form that will slide out to save your back when you're putting in heavy items. And you've got handy little extra cost options like a flip out load divider, which can help restrain smaller objects, or simpler luggage nets which clip onto these points here. Cost-wise, the V70's typical £28,000 to £38,000 pricing bracket puts it somewhere between estate versions of typical medium-range models, Ford's Mondeo estate and Skoda's Superb estate, for instance, and station wagon versions of typical executive saloons, BMW's 5 Series Touring, Audi's A6 Avant, and Mercedes E-Class estate being the obvious examples, though some buyers may also be considering Saab's 9.5 Sport Wagon. If you're looking at a diesel version of this Volvo and quite like the idea of an SUV style look with or without four-wheel drive, then your salesperson will point you in the direction of the XC70, a little more than a V70 in automotive hiking gear. Whatever V70 model you or your Labrador choose, the D3 or D5 diesels, this T4 petrol or the T5 or T6 petrol models, you should find your car to be decently equipped. All V70 variants come with alloy wheels, roof rails, all-round electric windows, a decent quality 8-speaker MP3 compatible CD stereo, dual zone climate control, cruise control and rain sensing wipers. Parents will want to specify the clever fold-out child booster seats, and all Volvo customers get the Volvo On-Call emergency and assistance service, which can be combined with the available Bluetooth mobile phone setup. Using Volvo On-Call, you can even activate your car's cabin heater remotely by SMS texting, so that the interior will be toasty warm by the time you come out of your front door. Neat. Another feature the brand is especially proud of is its Sensus infotainment system. Now here, a 5 or 7 inch colour screen in the top centre part of the dash controls everything from central locking to sat-nav, from a reversing camera to digital TV and telephone controls. Where fitted, it can also look after this car's many safety functions, and there are many, this being a Volvo. You get the Whip's anti-whiplash protection system, the usual quota of airbags, Isofix child seat attachment points, and the usual electronic assistance for braking, stability control and traction control. You also get Volvo's clever city safety system, whereby a laser fitted to the windscreen monitors traffic and other objects ahead of you. It uses the same kind of technology that this car's collision warning system also looks after, to make sure that if there's something in front that the system senses you're about to hit and you're not going to brake in time, well, it can either brake the car automatically if your speed is low enough, or if your speed is slightly higher, it can reduce your velocity to reduce the severity of the impact. That's fine for inanimate objects, but what about people? Well, Volvo has thought about that too. Their pedestrian detection warning system with full auto brake monitors human and animal activity in front as you drive, warning you of impending problems. And as before, if you don't respond, the system can automatically brake the car to either avoid an accident or lessen its severity. And there's loads more, depending on how you specify your car, though much of it is optional. So you can choose from a whole roster of kit that has things like adaptive cruise control to keep your safe distance to the car in front on the highway. There's a lane departure warning system to alert dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. There's a driver alert control system that monitors your movements as you drive and warns you if it feels you're getting drowsy and need to stop for a rest. And then there's a blind spot information system that stops you from pulling out dangerously to overtake in front of another car. Further accident avoidance potential can be garnered through specifying the active bi-xenon headlamps, which follow the bends in the road as you drive at night, giving you up to 230% more nighttime vision and enabling you to identify problems before you get to them, giving you up to 45 meters of extra braking time. Volvo's efficiency initiatives have reaped benefits at the pumps and cut CO2, but it's still necessary to avoid the more powerful petrol derivatives if you've an eye on day-to-day bills. The D3 and D5 diesel variants that most will want both manage to achieve around 52 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and put out a reasonable 144 grams per kilometre of CO2. That's as long as you don't specify them in thirsty automatic form. Also worthy of note is the petrol T4 that I'm driving here, that manages 40.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 164 grams per kilometre of CO2. Go for a thirstier petrol model though, and of course your bills will rise quite markedly. The 6-cylinder all-wheel drive petrol T6, for example, doesn't manage to crack the 20 miles to the gallon barrier around town. Residual values though should be strong for most V70 variants. There's always a ready market for good used examples of this car. Mind you, that's if you don't go mad with the options list in the first place when you're specifying your model. Insurance groups range between 29 and 41. This improved third generation V70 is unquestionably a more capable car than its predecessors and offers more for your money with a less brash look and feel than big German rivals. They may be better to drive, but they also cost more to buy and are arguably less practical. Here's a car that'll probably outlast you. A car that'll become part of the family as it takes ballet lessons, boating trips and skiing adventures in its stride. MPVs and SUVs might sound cleverer, but there's still little to touch this Volvo when it comes to doing what big estate cars need to do. If you're looking for the definitive example of the breed, look no further.